And good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for jumping on and joining us, or good morning if you're still out on the West Coast. We're getting ready for another one of our ATS University sessions, similar to a lunch and learn, a little bit of a webinar that ATS hosts to, help inform engineers and architects and interior designers about product in the industry. We have a variety of styles of these types of sessions. We may do a deep dive on the actual ATS spec tool. If you are new to the ATS spec tool, you might find value in going over to the recorded session on our website. And, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, we did a deep dive into how to utilize masters on the ATS spec tool. We have a number of new features surrounding masters and how they can really improve your ease of selection and your efficiency on the spec tool. The goal of ATS is always to try to reduce the amount of time it takes you to research a product or configure a selection or download that information into one of our 10 different formats. We also do some application discussions. I think, Rob, we've talked previously about, high traffic environments and what products are associated for like high traffic or schools. We've talked about that in the past as well. And then we'll do deep dives into product. And we bring on experts on the field. One of my favorite to deal with is Rob McLeod. You've helped me out with over the years with a number of different subjects from your experience over at Dobbin Sales. So with all that said, I'll pass it over to you and let you kind of introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Zach. My name is Rob McLeod. Been with Dobbin Sales now for, I think I'm coming up on 18 years, Zach. It's been a little while.
Wow.
So here today to talk to you about Murdoch Manufacturing. Today, what we're going to do is kind of go through a little bit of the history. Sorry, there we go. The history of Murdoch. We'll talk about who the brand is. Some of you may be aware of who Murdoch is. Some of it may be an introductory piece. Essentially, Murdoch is a manufacturer that specializes in water delivery products. So we're going to talk about kind of water coolers and drinking fountains, some of the maintenance and advantages and things that kind of that separate us from the competitors in this landscape, which make your clients, the ownership groups' lives a lot easier to maintain the product after you've specified and installed it. We'll talk about bottle filling stations, some outdoor products, and then some custom capabilities from there.
And then at the end, I know we talked about it as well, we'll show you how you can find the products on the spec tool, how it integrates into that selection process. Yep. And then as well, later on this week, all those in attendance will be sending out our certificates of attendance. So if you need to report your hours for your CPD hours or PEO, wherever you are, a lot of people have different standards. So you'll get a certificate of that. And if you have any questions along the way, I'm going to be quiet as much as I can for most of it, but I like to pepper questions. So if I could come up with any questions, or if you guys send any questions into the Q&A in the chat fields, I'll bring them up on your behalf. But with that, I'll let you dive into the subject today.
Perfect. So Murdoch is a company founded in 1853. So just this past year, we celebrated our 170th year in business. It is a family-owned business, still owned by the original family. It originally came out of Cincinnati, Ohio. Essentially, 170 odd years ago, people were drinking out of wells. Communal wells typically is your most common place for the community to get water. John Murdoch at the time created the first frost-free hydrant, allowing people to have access to water all year round. And that product kind of really, they had a lot to do with the rail yards and things like that as America was expanding and growing at that time, providing access to water throughout. And with that long history, we have products that have been installed for well over 100 years, still in operation, still repairable today with the original parts. It's kind of a testament to our longevity and quality of workmanship. There you can see Bob Murdoch in the top right corner. Bob is the 5th generation of the Murdoch family. He is the president of the operation of Murdoch Manufacturing. In 2006, Murdoch merged with Morris Group International. So some of you may be familiar with some of the brands under that umbrella of Murdoch Group International. So big ones like Acorn, J.R. Smith, Whitehall, some of those other brands. So Murdoch is another brand underneath that tree. And we're going to hear talk about Murdoch. So again, long-standing build quality, industry favorites. We're talking, really from parks to playgrounds to schools, universities, office buildings, golf courses. Murdoch, we're trying to provide water delivery products where people are. So just kind of quickly, just a little drinking water 101. So our three main categories here, we have a drinking fountain, a water cooler, and a chiller. A drinking fountain is going to be something that is just going to be delivering water for someone to drink at kind of whatever groundwater temperature is coming out of the building. A water cooler is something inside that has a refrigeration system to chill the water for some drink, and then a chiller is typically used remotely to cool the water before it gets to the actual fixture itself. So this kind of just basic 101 stuff, but we'll just touch on that for a second. Next here is our A17 series of water coolers. This is by far our most common platform of water cooler and fountain out there. Probably this would encapsulate the majority of what you people would specify on a regular basis on jobs, this series of products. And we'll talk about kind of what makes this design quite unique compared to what else is in the marketplace here. So with each one of our fountains or water coolers that is sold, we provide you with a maintenance tool. And that tool allows the facilities person and the installer to take care of the product and service everything they need to with this one tool. So with that one tool, it allows you to kind of put it in, remove the push button. You can remove the strainer from the bottom. You can change the cartridge all right from the front without having to actually, again, be on your back and take the whole water cooler apart. You can service it all right from the front with that universal tool. And how we accomplish that is each water cooler has this valve assembly in it that has an auto stop feature. So at the front, you can see the push button, and in behind it, the cartridge. Well, right below that, you'll see there's a little strainer that can get removed. That strainer, when you unthread that using the tool, it allows you to then clean out any of the debris or line trash that may try to get towards the valve from a service standpoint. But you also then isolate the flow of water to the valve. So you can now shut the water off to the actual cartridge itself, allowing you to change the cartridge right from the front. You think about any other brand in the industry, when somebody has to service it, they are on their back, taking the skirt off, disconnecting the base and the drain, just all to get to the actual workings of the valve. Ours can be done right from the front within seconds. And how that works is inside that valve, there's basically a little poppet that when the strainer's in place, the poppet is raised, allowing flow of water into the valve. When we remove that strainer, poppet drops, sealing off the flow to the cartridge itself. And that little strainer, it's a mesh screen, like a 100 micron strainer to help capture any again, debris that may have gotten. But the ability to service the fountain right from the front of the unit, it's absolutely amazing. Our bi-level units are a universal bi-level, meaning that you can install it with the right high or the left high, depending on whichever design you may want. Some local codes may have preference of which side they need for barrier-free compliance. Sometimes if you're replacing an old fixture, you need to be able to match what's there. So you can configure that as you need. Our drain assemblies, again, this theme of trying to simplify the design of this to make it easier to work on and have less potential leak points and hard things to reassemble thereafter. We provide almost more like a dishwasher hose type of setup as opposed to pipe with a million different slip joint connections. So when somebody has to change their configurations, they're not having to reassemble a drain line. Again, more potential leak points. We're trying to simplify it into a much simpler design. Ease of install is a big thing for us. We try to provide a much larger cutout on the back of our unit. So that allows the installer to accommodate kind of real world rough-in challenges. Sometimes, when we're talking about a refrigerated water cooler, there's not a lot of space inside those. So giving him a little bit more room to play with to make sure maybe his outlet, his drain line isn't in the right spot exactly, or the electrical box isn't quite where it needs to be. Extra space allows it to be a little bit more field configurable. Small details we do in the manufacturing process, which really impressed me, is On every other brand in the industry, I've taken all them out of boxes. I've slashed my hands and cut them every time I take one out. On the Murdoch units, we round the corners so that the installer doesn't cut his hands taking it out of the box. Just small little details with always our center focus, our ethos is to try to make the installer's life easier.
One quick question there on the install.
Yeah.
So obviously you've got those little cutouts, and the installation would the product would also come with like a face plate, like a hanger plate,
Yeah.
that goes on the wall that these go on. Do you require a carrier through the wall for that face plate to secure to?
So it would depend on the wall type, Zach. So every unit does come with a hanger bracket. If we're installing this onto a block wall or something that's pretty structurally sound, no, you're just bolting the hanger bracket into the wall and hanging the can. If you're going onto a wall that requires a little bit more support, like a drywall, you're going to want to specify that with a in-wall carrier. So obviously there'll be different carriers if you're doing a single level versus a bi-level, but that can be anyone's carrier. That could be J.R. Smith, that could be Watts, that could be Zurn, whatever brand that the firm typically likes to use. You just want to make sure that we provide adequate support for that wall.
Fantastic.
This image to me speaks volumes. We talk about, again, trying to make it easier for the installer and for the ownership group thereafter. Look, on the left is the image of the Murdoch water cooler from kind of a bird's eye top down. On the right is one of the major competitors. Inside the major competitor units, they have these push paddles, solenoids, wiring, micro switches. It becomes a very complex design, whereas ours, it's a direct acting mechanical cartridge right behind the push button. So much less parts to potentially break, so much easier to work on when you have to break it, and keeping that cost and ownership down when you may have to repair something. A cartridge that you can fix within 10 minutes from the front versus a solenoid or micro switches that you have to take the whole thing apart and spend a couple hours of labor and hundreds of dollars worth of parts. Again, everything's just trying to make life of the ownership group easier. Another big thing we do is we use a tube-on-tube evaporator system. So traditionally, the industry would use inside their insulated evaporator tank of their refrigeration system, they would have a storage vessel in there. And that storage vessel would be holding, maybe 4 or 5 ounces of water inside that evaporator tank. When someone takes a drink, the level would deplete, then it would fill back up, and the system would try to chill it. So that can have kind of a longer recovery time between cycles. Think in a busy environment like a school where you have lots of people try to drink over and over and over again. Well, the first person will get a cold drink, second and third, maybe not, because the system has to recover. We are using a tube-on-tube system, so you have a water line coiled around with piggybacked on top of that, a refrigerant line. So as it passes through, it gets colder and colder and colder. Kind of similar theory to a hot water tank, storage tank at your house versus an instantaneous water heater. Just obviously the inverse. That fast acting and fast recovering by a tube-on-tube system is great. The other big thing this does for you, though, is when you are, think about the environments these are typically installed in. A school is probably the most common. Well, in that school environment, there's going to be a lot of time where these things sit idle without being used. So if you have a storage tank system, some of that debris and line trash will get into that storage tank, settle to the bottom, and then that can potentially grow bacteria over time. By not having that storage tank, we eliminate that standing water bacteria concern. So kind of a nice thing to help make sure we're having clean, safe water, but at the same time having a much better performance from a recovery standpoint. A couple different styles of bubblers that we have available. The first here is our flexible bubbler. All these are completely antimicrobial, so no bacteria in theory is going to grow on it. But the main thing is it's a completely flexible bubbler. Some of the competitor bubblers they do have a bit of a flexible sheath to them, but the actual housing is still very hard plastic. So we're trying to eliminate that concern of, if somebody's taking a drink of water, the horseplay behind them gets bumped, bang, chips their tooth off the bubbler. We are providing you with a true flexible rubber bubbler. The other nice thing about the bubbler is, if you can see kind of that mounting shank in the bottom corner, well, that sits inside a little slot in the basin like this, so it can't rotate. It's in a fixed position. Whereas the other is just secured by a lock nut from below and can get turned. So that's one of the biggest complaints I hear at facilities is kids are taking that bubbler, turning it, and spraying water on the floor. Well, this eliminates that concern for wherever else. The other style of bubbler is kind of your more vandal resistant bubbler. What's nice about us is we provide a stainless steel bubbler. Everyone else in the industry is using chrome plated brass. So by doing this with the stainless steel, we're again helping to eliminate lead from the water and brass from the water. Those are things we're really trying to remove from our drinking system. So stainless steel is kind of ensures, again, completely lead-free waterways. The push button, again, a single direct acting with no complex linkages. As I talked to before, some of the competitor models that may have these little clips that then activate against micro switches and then to solenoid. We're talking a direct acting. You hit the push button, it depresses the stem of the cartridge, and you get water flow. So you're going to get that even if you don't have power. You'll always have the ability to have water flow. On a solenoid activated device, you can't drink it if there's no power. One other little thing, through the diamond of the push button, that's where you would do your stream height adjustment. So you take a small slotted screwdriver, and that would just literally touches against the tip of the cartridge in behind, and you can turn it to increase or decrease your flow. Again, a simple, easy way for the facilities person to actually make those adjustments, or the installer to make those adjustments. Filtration is a huge thing in the industry now. We're all very, very conscious about lead removal. From some of the old infrastructure out there, where we have these solder connections on old pipes that are leaching with all that lead solder that's now leaching into the water stream. We want to try to make sure that the drinking water we provide at the actual sort at the fixture here is safe to drink. So we can provide you an NSF 42 or 53 certified filter, which is going to remove lead from the water, the taste and odor of chlorine. And again, back to that theme about making the facilities person's life easier. Traditionally, on a filter, you have to get on your back, take the 4 screws off, remove the skirt to change the filter. That process is not easy. Typically, the facilities person has to call a plumber to do it because they're just not doing that themselves. So we have instead an easy drop-down door. So it allows you, with that same maintenance tool we talked about at the beginning, a little one screw drops down on a hinge. You can change the filter. The head itself has a stop built into it. So anyone can change their filter within about 30 seconds. There's nothing hard to do. We're really, really trying to make it easy for the people to own this product thereafter, make their filter changes simple.
One thing I just want to double check. So the WF1 and the WF3, obviously different gallon capacities. Is that a different filter than the drop-down filter?
So the drop-down filter door uses the same WF1 filter. We would just specify that with WF1 EZ or EZ, and that gives you a different bracket. Instead of having the filter mounted inside the cooler cavity, you get the one on the hinge. The WF3 is a larger capacity filter, 3,000 gallons. The cylinder itself is a little wider, so it won't fit in that drop-down door. It has to be mounted in the cooler cavity. That said, I know later this year we're coming out with a new version of that filter that will sit in the drop-down. So stay tuned on that, but that is coming soon. From a vandal resistance standpoint, I mean, as I mentioned, kind of being part of the Morris Group International and Acorn being another brand which really specializes in prison fixtures, Murdoch knows vandal resistance. So we have our good, better, best here. Good, you're gonna see you have your flexible bubbler. Your better, we have our stainless steel bubbler, and then our best is kind of the whole thing is welded. There's not many screws or seams somebody can get into. You would have like a screen inside the grill so somebody can't jam something in there to damage the fan. So really high impact environments like prisons or schools. These kids are crazy.
One thing that comes up consistently, like whenever I'm looking for a vandal resistant cooler, it's usually also in a either a remote location or somewhere that they need to ensure there's no electrical connection.
Yep.
Do any of these models come without, like a full manual version, or
You
do
could,
all of
yes,
them?
yeah, you could get them with in a full manual, so it would be non-refrigerated, obviously, but yeah, you can get that any of those full manual in the 14 gauge heavy duty steel if you need to as well. Yeah. And the other thing too, Zach, is because even if somebody had the refrigerated version and they just didn't have electrical, the unit is still going to work because it's still the push button itself. It just wouldn't be chilling the water.
Yeah, because I know the selection of full mechanical drinking fountains, and especially for the bottle fillers,
Yeah.
is a challenge.
Yeah. And what's nice is we do have we'll get to kind of some of the bottle filler stuff in a minute, but that capability for sure. Some of the kind of older style compact 5-gallon freestanding water coolers, not very common anymore, but still they do exist. Factory floors, assembly lines, stuff like that, where you kind of have to have water every so often. That's kind of where we still see these used the most, like at a Honda or a Ford plant or stuff like that. But um, they exist, so we'll quickly touch on them there. Our in-wall fountains. What's nice about our style of units, we have a much smaller footprint than anyone else on the industry. We can provide these bi-level barrier-free compliant fountains at a 32-inch wide panel. Everyone else is doing a 38.5-inch panel. So again, we're taking up less of your valuable floor space and footprint on your wall. The old style recessed fountains, whether you want it to be refrigerated, where we could have the chiller up above, and that could be mounted above an alcove for wheelchair compliance, or down below. Lots of different styles available. Still a need for these. People still use these quite a bit, these old recessed ones. But and another category that I'm really excited about is our ligature resistant line. So we have 3 or 4 different models that are completely ligature resistant. There's been a massive, Zach, you can probably talk to this a bit as well, but there's been a massive kind of trend to anyone working in healthcare. Ligature resistance is important. The amount of mental health, it's top of mind for everyone. Lots of government money going towards it these days as well. So any of the firms on the line who are doing anything in the healthcare space, having ligature resistant bottle fillers available is lovely. You can kind of see the bubbler in the bottom corner there is a cone shape, and the same thing with the bottle filler on the back wall, because you can't actually attach anything to it.
Yeah.
The chiller up above, instead of having typical fins or grills, it's a mesh screen. So again, you can't loop something through it. But that's a big trend in the industry. And please, Zach, if you have anything to comment.
Yeah, I would say like most new hospitals will have at least a floor or two of mental health. And in addition to that, there's a large increase in number of mental health facilities, and even facilities that you would not think require ligature resistance are sometimes incorporating it in the design these days.
Absolutely. Thank you, Zach. Lastly here, just remote chillers. Again, any of these fountains we talked about before, or whether it be a bottle filler on its own, whatever, a remote chiller is a nice option. So typically, this is something you want to try. My rule of thumb with remote chillers is you want to have it located as close to the fixture as possible, because the further our distance is away from the fixture, that you chill the water, it goes through the pipe, it sits there and becomes ambient. So it may take a little extra time for the user to now get new cold water traveling through the pipe. So the closer the better is kind of my rule of thumb. I'd say to a maximum of about 15 feet is where you'd want to allow. But often you'll have this, maybe mounted up in the ceiling space or a nearby maintenance closet or underneath a cabinet. Just got to be somewhere close by, and also somewhere that the chiller can breathe. So if it is in a cabinet, you need to make sure there's ventilation. But that's, quite common. So next category here we're going to chat about is bottle filling stations. So, big trend in design is everything we're trying to go green. So in That could be high efficiency lighting, that can be low flow toilets. Well, here what we're targeting is eliminating plastic single use bottles from landfill. So the amount of, over 50 billion single use plastic bottles are bought and sold each year worldwide. 4/5 of those end up in landfill. The amount of money we spend on these as a consumer, the amount of oil and petroleum that it takes to actually produce the plastics, then to travel it around the world is staggering. Even when we think we're doing the right thing and recycling that bottle, well, it's typically not used. When you recycle it, you think you're doing great, but it's actually getting turned into kind of downcycled into maybe plastic packaging or something afterwards, and then that ends up in landfill. So this cycle with single-use dependency on single-use plastics is something that we're trying to just really eliminate. And that is where kind of the H2O to go bottle filling station platform kind of was born out of. Touchless drinking fountains and bottle fillers designed with you in mind. We want to fill up, cool down, and get going. Indoor sensor-operated filling stations provide the ultimate in fresh water for any application. So bottle filling stations, we have three main categories. On the left is I call it our architectural series. That's kind of the new H2O to go platform. In the middle is I kind of refer to it as the tank series. It's our original design. All metal bottle filler, quite a bit more robust, and then the bottle filling stations on their own on the right. So these bottle filling towers, they will mount onto that A17 series of water cooler that we talked about earlier. It's just going to share that refrigeration system, share that filtration with the bottle filler. You can get it with a bottle counter display, or you can get it without a bottle counter display. You can get them hardwired, like plugged in, or you can get battery powered units. So there's, again, we talked about maybe Zach, some remote locations where they may not have access to power. Well, we have battery operated versions as well. And we have, again, a quick fill rate, laminar flow. That quick fill rate, this on the right here is what happens like in real time filling up out of the H2O to go bottle filling station. On the left is if you were filling out of a traditional drinking water out of the bubbler. Some of the competitor brands on their push button units are still at that 0.4 GPM flow rate too. So again, thinking about where these are being installed in a school environment, you want to be able to turn the line over quickly where everyone's trying to get a drink between math class and English class. So fast fill rate is important. Airports, how huge traffic, we want to turn that line over quickly. So a fast delivery of water is of paramount importance within this category. Just a quick kind of snapshot of the different styles of bottle fillers that can mount onto that A17 series. So our BF11 would be our push button operated, fully mechanical bottle filler. Some school boards and some of your clients may want to have just push buttons. A lot of facilities people just want to have a very dumbed down unit. They don't want sensors. They don't want that potential expensive repair part thereafter. So push button mechanical, fully mechanical unit is what they want. We can do sensor operated, the BF12 without a bottle counter. We can do it with a bottle counter as well. And that bottle counter, how that works is every 16 ounces of water that passes through the system, it'll show you one bottle saved from landfill. Our vandal resistant series, that kind of tank style that I mentioned before, the BF1S, the BF2S, and the BF2S BCD, the same thing. Push button, sensor operated counter. Kind of some standalone bottle fillers. The BF4, our in-wall unit, the BF16 surface mounted, very, very slim profile on it still. And then the BF EZS 168, which is the refrigerated surface mounted. So instead of having to use a remote chiller, we have the refrigeration system directly below the bottle. It's the same frame as our typical A17 series, but we lop off about 6 inches from the front because we don't have a bubble. The BF16 BCD, this is our surface mount bottle filler. And this image to me, it does illustrate a lot of the little details again that Murdoch does to make things a little bit better for the facility people thereafter. So small things like on our water lines, we zip tie them to the actual frame itself. So, in a building and real world environment, you're going to have some pressure fluctuations and whatnot, and that can kind of create that garden hose effect as that pressure goes up and down on the water lines. Well, that can put stress on the push connect fittings. So by securing that to the actual frame, we help to kind of reduce that risk of potentially a push connect fitting bursting. We provide you with a little shutoff valve inside the actual bottle filler and also on the ones that mount on the A17 series. So if somebody needs to just work on the bottle filler, they can just shut the water off right there. On our surface mount unit that's on the screen here, there's a little cable sheath. So as you undo the top screws, you tilt it forward without having to remove the whole thing and disconnect the drain. You can work on any of it inside. We have our plug-in power cord, the electrical box roughed in inside the actual bottle filler itself. Some other brands on their surface mount units, they have a power cord that dangles down and plugs into a wall. So not very vandal resistance. Everything, anyone walking by can just unplug it. We hide it inside of our unit. Our in-wall refrigerated or non-refrigerated bottle filling stations and fountain combos here. What's nice about these is everything that I said about your A17 series, where you can work on them from the front, and this goes to every fountain we've shown so far. The same thing, you can work on that directly from the front, the strainer underneath, the exact same valve. So with the same tool and the same key, someone can actually fix this from the front of the unit without having to actually disconnect, remove the whole bowls, disconnect the drain, take the whole thing off the wall. You could fix our cartridge from the front within minutes.
Yeah, the one
and the main
is nice, but I really like that A15. Like it's very slim profile compared to the kind of main model, right? You know,
yeah,
having a little bit more of an architectural design, thinner profile, sleeker look is definitely something that's being requested.
100%, yeah. And the nice, being all stainless steel too, a lot easier from a cleaning standpoint. You're not going to have any of that plastic film peeling off of them. It's all, easy for them to maintain. And again, you can work on it right from the front. The bottle filler, I don't know if you can kind of see, there's a small little seam where that little bottle filler area is. The two little set screws underneath, you can remove those, pull that part out, and just work on your electronics with the bottle filler and then put it back in. Other brands, when you have to work on their stuff, if you don't have a pipe chase on this style of this category of product, you are removing the entire thing off of the wall. So a couple hours of labor to do versus, again, you can fix ours within minutes from the front. And any one of these kind of things that we've shown thus far, we can get them filtered. You can get them non-filtered. You can get them refrigerated or non-refrigerated with a flexible bubbler or stainless steel bubbler, single level or bi-level, light gray or stainless steel, sensor operated or push button, indoor or outdoor, and different custom configurations. Like the possibilities what we can do within our product line are quite endless. So if there's anything that your client may want, please reach out to us. We can get it done. Again, just to stress here, we're so much easier to install than the other brands, having much less parts inside. We have a universal hanger bracket. We'll fit on we'll match up to any other brand's rough-ins from a replacement standpoint. Again, larger cutout, easier to install, less parts inside. That refrigeration system with a tube-on-tube evaporator tank, much less parts, the drop-down filter door, and again, the valve serviceable right from the front of the unit. Try to make it so easy, not having to lie on your back to take apart the whole thing for a simple maintenance procedure. Quickly, we'll talk on the outdoor category of products. This has been something that's been really growing rapidly. You have a generation of people who've had bottle filling stations in their schools as they've grown up and through their universities and colleges. Well, now we're trying to take that water to where else we are in our lives. So the soccer fields, the walking trails, the dog parks. People want access to water everywhere now, and everyone is carrying around reusable bottles. So municipalities and cities are providing this infrastructure all over the place now. There's some funky designs that we can do that looks like a tree. We have your traditional kind of heritage style products, and then probably our most popular is that bottle filling station platform. On the bottle filling station platform, heavy 12 gauge steel. So like, talk about vandal resistant. That's as tough as it gets. You can take a baseball bat to it, you'll break the bat. You can get them in tons of different finishes, whatever color you want. You can get different configurations, whether a bottle filler only, with a fountain, with a dog bowl. Nice little things that we do is we hide our mounting bolts inside the actual cylinder of the bottle filling station instead of having a large collar. So somebody could possibly trip it. It kind of looks a lot cleaner, not having that mounting collar out hidden. Having it hidden looks a lot nicer. Wall mounted units, again, different configurations, whether it be a bottle filler only, bottle filler with a fountain arm, or with two fountain arms. That old school concrete aggregate stuff, we can do that. We still have that as well. Pet fountains, these are a huge growing category. Dog parks, walking trails, people are putting these everywhere. You can get them on a fountain itself, or you can get a pet bowl on its own if you want. So some places like just a dog park, they may just want to provide access for the puppies only, and we have that. Again, bottle flow station only. That's kind of our slimmer design unit. You can do them sensor operated and push button. So sensor is kind of hidden up where the outlet is, so the sensor would be shining straight down instead of, so you don't have that risk of direct sunlight hitting into the IR sensor. It still has a push button in the event that the battery's having to die. It's still going to work on a push button. And then there's kind of two main categories, a standard unit and a freeze resistant unit. The standard units have the cartridge right behind the push button, again, a direct acting. Whereas the freeze resistant models, how that works is we have off the back of a push button, we have an air line that travels down below the ground. You have the valve buried below the frost line. You push the button, an air charge goes down that tube to the valve. It opens up, water flows to the outlet. As soon as you let go, that air charge stops, the water drains all back down the ground. So you never have water above grade, possibly freeze. And the wall mount units, the same type of thing. The valve and the trap are located on the inside of the building as opposed to, and the same principle would apply. Sensor operated units, hand washing stations. This is something that kind of has been probably born out of COVID, but is a real need out there. A lot of people don't want to touch anything. We've had certain municipalities in the country who've been installing these hand washing stations, providing water and access to some marginalized communities. Like, we have about 5 of them currently installed in the city of Vancouver. Some areas are kind of like Maine and Hastings, where, not the nicest areas for people, it's a lot of homeless, a lot of drug addiction, but we want to be able to provide them with access to water, access to wash their hands, access to fill up a bottle.
I mean, you mentioned the dog bowls. I think having those in a dog park would be great as well, because then you can at least wash your hands after picking up whatever you need to pick up.
That's a very good point. And kind of the last thing we're just chatting about here is our custom capabilities. The nice thing with Murdoch is we have on the right-hand side of the screen, that's kind of our standard colors that we have always in inventory. And we can paint any one of the fountains that I've shown you today in any one of those colors at no charge. But if you do want to have one of your, like say your architect or your designer has a specific Pantone color that they want to match, we can do any fixture in that color. There will be an upcharge, we would have to source that exact shade of paint. But it's not a crazy upcharge. And if there's several unit fixtures involved in that project, the cost comes down. But for your designers, we can match any color they want, and that's a big thing in the design. We can do kind of custom vinyl wraps. We can do logos, all kinds of different things. A couple just quick examples of some of the stuff we have done. If you have a client who wants to put their corporate logo onto the bottle filling station, we can do that. In schools, on the right there, you can see an outdoor unit. We just did this for the town of Comox on Vancouver Island. So we put the town's logo, City of Comox, town of Comox, sorry, and then it was actually sponsored by their local baseball association. So the baseball association put their logo on it, and it was a creative way for the town to fund this fixture with a nice new amenity for the community that was sponsored by a local community group. And some of the other cool ones we've done, again, like a bottle filling station that looked like a tree. Different kind of wraps, one we did at Disney. So there's lots of different capabilities available to us here. Anything you can dream up. If your client wants to have their logo on it, your designer wants to have a specific color to match their overall design scheme, we can do it.
One of the really interesting case studies that I recall you telling me about, I think it was last year, where there was you were talking about, difficult communities, marginalized communities. It was a school down in Detroit where they had torn off the bottle fillers and drinking fountains multiple times over the years. And then they put the logo on. And then all of a sudden they stopped getting torn off the wall and beat up and damaged.
Yeah,
Having that little bit of pride in your community or
yeah,
pride in
the
your
sense of
field.
pride for our football team was more important than
Yeah.
damaging this, damaging this fixture. So,
But hey, if it works, then it works,
100%.
right?
It's a nice way to kind of personalize and do something cool to your design. And then just lastly here, obviously, we are completely integrated in the ATS system. I'd like to kind of tag in Zach here to talk a little bit and maybe help walk us through some of the ways that you can use the spec tool.
Yeah.
And talk about that for us.
Yeah, for sure. Dobbins has been a longtime partner of ATS, and the Murdoch brand is certainly available on ATS across North America now. But not just on ATS. If people are unaware, there's also new white label tools. So if you want the specific Dobbins brand of product, you can go to the Dobbins white label. I think it's just Dobbins spec at dobbinspectool.com or something like that. I have it saved in my URL instead. But we also have all the products integrated into the actual more broadly known ATS spec tool, which actually I think we're wrapping up here anyway. So I'll take over the screen sharing and we can dive into kind of the spec tool itself. Let me move this around, clean that up. So I'm going to hide your faces. If this is your first time seeing ATS, welcome to ATS. Thank you for joining a webinar. I hopefully you learned a lot. If you go to atspec.com, you can find the products that we talked about today. It is a login type service, free for architects, engineers, and interior designers. Once you set up your password, log in, you'll be organized within your firm's account. So you can share projects across the firm and get the updated, accurate product details. One thing I wanted to mention, if you go to this Architects and Engineering tab, you can go to Learning Hub and go to those previous recordings, like I mentioned at the top of the session. So you can find, the previously recorded sessions, whether it's product discussions, and we also did a master's presentation recently. The other thing I'll mention is, masters is kind of a bit of point of confusion sometimes, just because everyone has their own definition of that word. Often a firm will have their own internal master. To us, a master is just a standard set of selections that you are using repeatedly. To help out with that, we have what we would call our ATS masters, which we have coined the word templates. So this would be like a long-term care master or an elderly care facility, mechanical room, the standard products that you would find in a mechanical room or a Class A office, or these anti-ligature designs. All of those can be downloaded, but they're also available to use within the spec tool, similar to how you would use your own firm's standard repeat fixtures set up as masters. So once you're logged in, this will be your dashboard. You can see we're advertising a couple of pieces of information here, like the hygienic hydration webinar. And obviously those hygienic hydration products are often used in educational facilities. So we have our information available there where you can download that. And then you've got your general dashboard that explains your projects that you're working on, helps you get started on new ones, all that various information that's available. Those can all be accessed in more detail here on the left sidebar, which I do want to highlight one new thing as well. If we are in our dashboard and we click on product catalog, one thing that people have been requesting for a long time is the ability to browse within ATS. You may not be having a specific project that you're working on at the time. Maybe you just want to browse the drinking fountain category. Now you can do that without creating a quick spec, a master, or a project. Now, in order to configure and download the product, you would have to go through and actually, create a quick spec or create a project in order to download it. So your projects can be accessed here, your masters here. So you can see this is my demo engineer account. So we have a ton of different masters set up. we would certainly be here to help you out with your masters, whether it's anyone on my market development team, which is kind of like your firm's account managers. If you have a number of condos that you're working on, if you're doing pharma work, hotels, anything like that, there you are using a standard set of selections repeatedly, setting up a master is a great idea, because then once you are in a project, I've set up this hydration webinar demo project here. All you have to do is drag and drop from the master into the project. I'll show you the really quick version first, and then I'll show you the the configuration selection version. So you can see I've got all those same masters available here. I can go to my ATS templates as well. I can filter down by application type, and we can see we've got class A, B, C offices pre-built. So I can go into I've got different product groups within this. So I could find, say, a drinking fountain or a hydration product, and it's a simple drag and drop over. So if I need a standard toilet selection, I'll say these two first. We can just drag these two over to a new product group. So then I can have my bottle fillers in one, my drinking fountains in another, and now in a matter of seconds, I've copied over, approved standard fixtures for this application type. But let's say now we can find our drinking fountain in there. We can go to that same plus button and go to create new drawing, and we'll start configuring our selection. You can see I've got my pinned favorites here at the top. So there's a ton of different product available within the spec tool now. We can scroll forever on this. So you may want to go through, pin your favorite categories. Of course, you can also search for your favorite categories, or if you know that model number off by heart, which I won't pretend I know the Murdoch model numbers off by heart, but you can then get in here and start configuring it yourself. So we can filter by fixture type if we want cooler, bottle filler, pet fountains, outdoor applications, all those different types. So let's do a bottle filler. We'll filter down to just showing those. You can also sort by application, mounting, number of stations, et cetera, et cetera. So if we want our refrigerated bottle filler only, we can then start configuring it. So we can add on that Enviro glaze where we're going to add our custom graphics. We can include our filter that we talked about. If you want to include the bottle counter option, we can include that as well. And then once we're done configuring, our model number is going to update, and we can hit add product. And that's kind of the difference between, this same information. That manufacturer's spec sheet is going to be available on the Murdoch website as well. But what this does is gives you the actual configured version of that product. So you can get the generic model from the manufacturer's website, but you can't necessarily get the configured version. Additionally, we always recommend the appropriate, we call this our fixture chain. So with your drinking fountain, with your bottle filler, you'll need a supply stop. You should have a P-trap in, or you might have an indirect connection. Maybe you're handling that connection a different way. If you decide that you don't require a P-trap, you can skip it and just hit complete. If you were doing a bi-level cooler, then that would come complete with your carrier as well. So you can see the previous version that I set up ahead of time. Got those same products here, but now these are included fixture change. Now, if you want to, that's all well and good. How do I then get this information off of the website and into your project on your computer? You download it in any number of ways. We can download the entire product group here. We can download a single fixture. We can download all of the different product groups. So all 3 different product groups all at once. So let's do the product group that I have. We'll hit download, and then you can include any of the different formats that we have. So submittal format, do you want to include the list pricing or not, depending on where you are in your discussions. We have product brochures where you can have multiple products per page. So if you want to provide different aesthetic options, and then have a meeting with your architect or your interior designer and present them. This is a great format for that. Schedules in Excel, multiple different written specs. So we can get a long spec, short spec, or the CSI 3-part spec. With the long spec, one thing I want to highlight is the ability to exclude page formatting. Our standard download format comes with, indentation and, tabbing and all that stuff. If you want to exclude that because it's easier to copy and paste and put into your own formatting, then you can do so. Of course, the manufacturer spec. So this will give you the manufacturer spec for every product in the product group, the Revit files, and I previously mentioned the CSI 3-part spec. So again, it comes down to like, why would you use the ATS spec tool versus just going to the Murdoch website? Well, the Murdoch website is going to give you the manufacturer spec sheet. You might have a different third-party app that may give you different written specs. Those are not going to be configured and you're going to have to pay for them. You may have another service like BIM Object that can give you the Revit files. I'm unaware of anything that is giving you a fixture schedule in Excel. I'm unaware of anything that's giving you multiple different versions of written specs. And I certainly don't know of anything that's giving you product brochures or those combined submittals where you're merging multiple manufacturers all in one spot. So that's really the benefit of using the ATS spec tool or the white labeled Dobbins spec tool. It's combining those formats into one place, combining multiple manufacturers into one place, and then allowing you to actually configure those products and not just get a static version of it. So you can see as it continues to download, the different formats are popping up here. Of course, I've always assumed that I'm going to be, Rob's great. He gives me plenty of time, but I always assume that I'm going to be running late. So I pre-downloaded this for us. You can see our manufacturer spec sheet is the heaviest format. It's 17 meg. So you won't often have our spec team sending this to you. The file size is going to be too large, but you can download this yourself. I'll pop that open real quick as we're waiting for the other download to finish. So this gives you a nice table of contents and then shows the specific configured product selections. And of course, the manufacturer's cut sheets for each of these. So if you need more detail than our standard submittal format, that's where that manufacturer spec sheet combination comes in. This is our standard version where you get the configured selection. Your written spec here is going to be customized towards the product that you selected. And of course, we can include the list price as we're showing there, where if any of the products have list price, it'll be included. I'll show the long spec really quick. So again, everything's open and editable. If you are just looking for a specific part of this, if you just need the Murdoch section, maybe your master spec has a generic stops and traps section. You don't need this detailed stops and traps. You can just copy what you need, put that into your own internal written selection, however you're writing that spec. Of course, wanted to mention our CSI 3-part spec as well. Slightly different format, a lot of the same information, just organized differently. So you get the written spec in the beginning, the basis of design, and then if you needed to include alternates, if you have 3 names and numbers, you could then include your approved alternates in the line below. I mentioned the fixture schedule as well. So our schedule format here. Gives you a schedule. Now, one thing I'd mention, I start showing the other product groups, right? If you have multiple product groups that maybe are different, maybe you have complete projects. So you've got drinking fountains, you've got your floor drains and backflow and water heaters and pumps. All of those have different categories that would be required to build a proper fixture schedule. Your HVAC schedule is very different than a plumbing fixture schedule, which is different than a pump schedule and different than a water heater schedule. So those would come at different tabs on the bottom. and separate based on the most common categories, common headers for those category of products. And then again, open and editable, you can copy and paste, put that directly on your drawings. I mentioned the Revit as well. We've got the Revit for all of the different files, all broken down. Can't show that one. I don't have Revit on my computer. Apologize. I am not your, I understand a fair bit of Revit, but I don't necessarily work within it. So that's the really quick version of the intro to ATS. If you do not have masters set up, I highly recommend getting that organized. Reach out to myself or Mo, Mel, any of our market development team, and we will work with you to help you get a master's set up to your liking. I have a number of firms that will have, let's say, a drainage master, a standard office master, and then specific application types. So if you're doing a lot of healthcare, then you'll have different products for that. And then when you're EIT, we'll work with the leads and the principals on getting those masters set up so that then when your EITs, your junior designers, your project managers maybe don't have as much plumbing experience, they can come and see, okay, this is my approved pharma master. And then I can filter these down to say our lab products here, drag and drop these over. Or if I'm doing my first community center in a long time, this is where I can find my, this is my approved bottle filler or a more high-end architectural version that is going to be configured to include, if your firm tends to have a water filter and, other owner groups don't, then it'll include those options. So it's certainly a very value-added version because, again, it just makes it so simple. Check a couple of boxes, go to the copy selected drawing, and you can drag this either within to add 2 new selections here, or I could drag this over to the new product group and create a new product group on its own. Really easy to keep things organized and updated. And of course, if you then need to revise or delete, you can revise and delete. So really simple to find all the information you need, configure the selections you need, and then download it in the formats you need. That's the plan with ATS. Hopefully improve everything and make it easier, just like we're getting improvements on our water filters for our bottle fillers, just like we're having improvements on how the refrigeration works. I didn't even know that you guys had switched to that design, so you're preventing standing water, which makes a ton of sense to prevent bacterial buildup. That's a great attribute of the product. Saves space, makes it easier to service. All those aspects of the Murdoch bottle fillers were great to learn. So thank you very much for your time today, Rob. It was fantastic as always. Thank you to those that jumped on and learned with us today. Hopefully you join us again for the next ATS University. And if you have any questions or follow up to this, please feel free to reach out, Zach@atspec.com. Have a great rest of the day, y'all. And then
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, Rob. That was great as always. Always love doing this with you. Bye for now.